Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on Superman and Lois Season 4, and this is going to be my review for Episode 9 for this season, the penultimate episode, the second last episode of not just the season, but the show as a whole, otherwise entitled To Live and Die Again. Wow. Spoiler going forward. That's all I have to say heading into this penultimate episode, and we're talking about it, going, well, first, before we jump into that, if you enjoyed the episode, let me know your opinions in the comment section down below about that, as well as any theories and speculation moving into the finale next week, episode 10. Always curious to hear what you guys are thinking about what's coming up and what you enjoyed about this episode. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, you enjoyed the episode as well, you're looking forward to what's coming next week with the final episode ever of not just the season, but the show as a whole, drop a like on the video to show your support and excitement levels. But as we're saying, heading into this episode, I think I might have said it at the end of last week's review, but also in the trailer breakdown for this episode, I wouldn't be surprised if this episode serves as almost like not necessarily a part 1 and part 2, but not as in it's one big episode, if that makes sense, but they complement each other and they lead into each other really well, almost serving as like a part 1 and part 2, very similar to how episode 1 and 2 functioned for this season. Like if they wanted to drop this episode, or both these episodes, episode 9 and 10, on the same day, like they did with episode 1 and 2, it would have sort of made sense as well. But I think the way they end this episode, it makes you go, oh, a bit frustrated, but now excited because it's a literal cliffhanger how the episode ends. So get you excited for next week's episode, and you can go throughout the next week or the next 6 or 7 days going, what's going to happen? But of course, last episode leading into this one, the two major things that we learn is that Clark is going to lose his powers, through the heart transplant. He is pretty much at where General Lane is, so he is slowly losing his powers, and he is eventually going to die, almost essentially at the age that General Lane hypothetically would going forward. So that's what he knows. With the next big thing is that Lex does get John Henry's suit, and we know it's getting some upgrades, which is leading into this episode. So those were the two major things, I guess. But there was also the continuation, which is the, integrity around Lois Lane, which the episode does address, but I think we might see a bit more of a focus on it maybe in the finale, because they might put a full stop on it. But it's through the debate between Lex and Lois where the final outcome, because it's a bit biased, the program that Lois is on, it's conceived, at least to the public, that Lois Lane is maybe a bit of a liar and lied about some things in regards to Lex Luther. But overall, this episode I thought was, as I said, it was a very, it wouldn't have felt out of place if they put this episode and episode 10 together essentially on the same night, just had like a 2-hour finale like they did with a 2-hour premiere. But it sets up everything we need, but not in like a shove it in your face sort of way. It just goes, oh here. It doesn't do that. It's just playing off everything that we've had previously in the season, and even in like season 3, even in season 2. There's I don't know if anyone noticed it, but if you see like the episode recaps they do at the beginning of the episode, like previously on Superman Lois, blah blah blah, they're showing heaps of stuff. Like they were showing like quite a lot of stuff, and I was like, okay, normally you get this in the finale, not this second last episode. So I was like, okay, it seems like they've done the work that would be in the finale in this episode, because they showed like everything relevant from previous on the show that's relevant in this episode in that recap, which they might have normally left for the finale itself. But yeah, I think the scale of the episode really surprised me as well. I think there was a lot of talk about them leaving all the budget until the finale. Yeah, that didn't happen. We got a bit of that budget sprinkled into episode 9. But let's just break it down, because there's actually quite a lot to talk. I think I've actually written the most notes for any episode this season for this episode. I think I've written 3 pages. Jesus Christ. But anyway, and they're not like massive, not like it's like an A4 thing, but it's still like, I think on average is about 2 pages for all the other episodes. So this is about, just under 3 pages. But anyway, the first thing is that Luthor has leaked out that Superman is getting weaker. So the general public knows this. So it makes me wonder if it's like going to be this thing like where people see Superman fighting potentially, or just, there's a worry there. I'm not too sure. It just could be like a Luthor thing that he's just trying to get to Superman's head, and that's the only reason it's in the plot. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a big thing that the public's like, oh no, Superman's getting weaker. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be a thing. I don't think it will. I think it was just more of a play by Lex Luthor. But Jonathan really wants to like properly take out Luthor, and I was wondering if we're going to get anything with that. I don't think that's gonna be a thing. Obviously, it's not a thing in this episode, and I don't think it's gonna be a thing in episode 10. Then I think there'll still be a confrontation probably between Jordan and Jonathan and Luthor, but I don't think in like any major thing. At least I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not too sure. But that whole debate thing from last episode with Lois and Luthor, it is affecting the Gazette, not necessarily in regards to like threats or anything like that, but on the advertising side. Everyone's like, well, I don't know, I don't really want to advertise in there and stuff like that. So that's where it's affecting them in the pocket. But I did like Clark planning to use Luthor's method of getting into people's heads on Luthor himself. I thought that was a really, really smart thing. We'll talk about the scene that's in question in a second, but I thought that was a pretty good plan. I think it actually turns out well in the episode. But we do see Jonathan and Jordan, I guess, I don't know if basking is the best term, but I guess that's the term I wrote down. They bask a tiny bit in their newfound fame within the town. Obviously, these are people visiting from outside of town as well, but they do address to themselves about them having to step up. You know, that like their dad just can't handle all of this. They can't just sit on the sidelines. They're gonna have to, help, whether it is directly alongside him or just around, what's going on. So that's something that they realize they have to do. But speaking of Superman, he does go to Luthor Corps to face off to Lex, and we do have Superman getting to Lex through saying Amanda is pulling the strings. Hey, you're not the one in control. I thought you were the guy in control. In my situation, I'm Superman. I'm in control. Who would have thought Lex Luthor's not the one pulling the strings? What a weakling. And Lex does go to his methods of like trying to threaten Superman, but Superman is just like not buying into it. He just sort of like smirks at him and goes, okay, tough guy. And this is triggering Lex to the extreme because Lex knows that he's in an uncomfortable situation, dressed up in the suit, playing businessman 101 and stuff like that. He knows he's not in a comfortable situation, which does suggest that he is not in control. So he knows that, that he's doesn't have the upper hand in this situation directly at the very least. In regards to the one in control, as I said, like Superman does bring up Amanda herself rocks up in Smallville at the Gazette with a lawsuit for Lois, but she also suggests that Cheryl Kimball is dead, which we hadn't seen her since like episode 3 or 4 or something like that. It was on the rooftop, I think was the last time we saw her. I think that was. Yeah, it was. It was on the rooftop was the last time we saw her. So we haven't seen her since then, and we're led to believe she is dead. But Lois's plan of attack on Lex is losing, because like Otis Grisham, dead. Apparently killed himself in prison. Cheryl Kimball, apparently dead. She has no photographical or video evidence, unlike with on the debate where Lex was showing stuff and everything like that. She doesn't have anything like that. So it's all falling apart. She's, I guess, losing across the board in regards to her evidence because it's either dead or just non-existent, that she can't prove it. So she decides to start over from the beginning, and this is following a talk with Clark. So she decides to start from square one, not necessarily I'll go back to when she first started it, actually go back in time. She's not time traveling, she's not the Flash, but go back to where the investigation started all those years back, who was involved at the core, and where did Lex's sort of empire build from, and try and find the connective tissue there. Now we do have Clark taking the boys to the Fortress of Solitude to train against holograms, and they choose to fight against the hologram of John Henry, which makes sense from season 1 because Lex Luthor has the suit. So it makes sense that you train him. It might be like, well, hold on, is this going to really be a comparable fight? And it was like, well, yeah, in that season 1 fight between John Henry and Superman, John Henry was legitimately trying to kill Superman. He wasn't trying to weaken him and capture him. He was trying to kill him there and then. So it's a pretty good matchup. Now, this training doesn't go well. The boys are pretty hopeless at it. And it's pretty much just Superman seeing or Clark specifically seeing where the boys are at in regards to where they can, what levels they can achieve, and he is doing it individually. It's Jordan having a go, then Jonathan having a go. It's not a combination thing. It's just individually, which was an important thing, which I noted when watching the episode, and I would have mentioned it here, but we'll talk about it specifically for something later in the episode. Now, Lois goes to see a very big surprise in the episode. I wasn't expecting this guy to show up. Bruno Mannheim. We get a bit of an interesting guest star, and he's at Stryker's prison, obviously, so that's where Lois goes. And Bruno tells her that she made the choice to release Lex when she was warned. She was warned, hey, he's going to be a pain in the ass and very dangerous if you let him out. Trust me, just leave him in there. And Lois realizes that, when she did that, she acknowledged it last season. It was a risk doing it, but she felt it was the morally right thing to do. I don't know if she'd admit right now, certain things, but Lois wants Bruno to assist her case rebuild, if you want to put it, like connect the dots from back in the day and try and find a new path in regards to taking him down with the truth. Of course, if they just kept the whole thing, the Box Moxie, killing and stuff from last season, that's keeping him locked up or taking him down with a lie or not the truth. She wants to take him down with the truth, and Bruno Mannheim's going to try and assist with that. But speaking of Lex, he does go to see Milton Fine, where we appear to see a bit of a nod to Kandor on his desk. You see like the little glass dome thing, which if you don't know, like the Kandor is a city on Krypton, and it's like shrunken, and like Brainiac keeps it. So they're like alive in there, but they're just shrunk. Obviously, I'm not saying that's what it is, but it's obviously a nod to that thing from the comics, which is associated with Brainiac, which I thought was a pretty cool little Easter egg there. I don't know if anyone will know. It was pretty, like, it stood out quite a bit. Like, they clearly put it in frame, obviously. So I think a couple of people would have at least noticed it. But Lex does get an update on the suit, and we see that there's kryptonite additions, which is pretty interesting. And we also learned that the DoD has a file called Project Doomsday. And I wasn't too sure specifically that would fall out into this episode, but we've been talking about it on the channel, like, since Doomsday went away. He's going to come back, because his exit was so quick and random. It would have been the most, like, anticlimactic end for that character. So he was obviously going to me at the very least, I was like, I'm pretty damn sure he's going to come back into it. We just weren't sure what side, because he left in the terms of like, oh, he recognizes Lois and he almost listened to Lois. So is he going to come back and help Superman? Well, we find out what happens, and it's pretty gnarly. But Bruno Mannheim does tap into Luthor's past with Lois with not too much success, I guess, but Cheryl Kimball is brought up, and we learn that Lex and her were an item, and she was just sort of shoved to the side once Lex got everything he needed from her, showing like Lex's lack of care, I guess. But it also puts a big like parallel or comparison point to what Amanda McCoy is at the moment, and Lex and Lois knows that that's the weapon she can use at this point. So Lois does go to Amanda McCoy to not necessarily like harass her about it, but just warn her about becoming the new Cheryl Kimball, and it pushes Amanda to ask Lex about Cheryl. But after talking with his mother, we do see Clark realizing that individually, the boys just will not reach. No way. They're not going to get anywhere near reaching what Superman was. But together, when you do a bit of a Dragon Ball Z fusion, not necessarily them actually fusing, but them fighting side by side, they can be quite the weapon. We do get a bit of a training montage between the two boys fighting as one team. It's a bit of a 2v1 against Superman, and Superman realizes, okay, I think we got something here. Now, the training is cut short, and we'll get to why that is cut short in a second, but I feel like we're going to get that in the finale. I think we're going to get a cool fight scene with Jordan and Jonathan taking on one thing. I think it might be Lex. I know we're talking about before where it might not, like, there might not be that thing between Jonathan and Lex before, but I think if there's like a scene where those two fight together in a quick thing, it might be against Lex. I just don't know if they'd do it against Doomsday. But then again, they might do something, but actually it's probably the smarter one, wouldn't it be? Because they were comparing it, Like, so maybe it's like a weakened Superman and the two Superboys, and them all combined. It's just that extra bit of strength more than what Superman was when he was fighting Doomsday originally to defeat him. So that might be the way they go about it, but we'll wait and see, obviously. But Amanda does confront Lex at Smallville in the hotel, and she learns Lex wants to make Smallville pay for what's happened. Now, before this conversation can conclude properly, so there's no proper resolution to this, which I think is obviously like Lex probably preferred just getting out of there. John Henry's suit is ready thanks to Milton Fine, and it comes for Lex and he suits up. And this is where we do have Lex finding Doomsday, and he's in the mines, because I was wondering, where is he going to be hiding? Like, I think we're even talking about he might be hiding on the moon, just sitting up on the moon or something like that. But he's in the mines, and he's just been in the mines since I guess he left Lois, and he's trying to get home. And I thought that was actually a really smart thing. Like, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, he remembers everything, certain things from his past life, and that's how he got here. So it makes sense he'd go back there. So I thought that was actually really well done. But we do have Lex killing Doomsday again with some like ex-kryptonite like missiles, I guess you could say, which leads to the final evolution, if you want to put it. And Lois has no effect on this Doomsday now. You look at him, he looks very like he's got the full-on spikes going on. Looks crazy. He looked, by the way, I need to note this. That is daylight CGI. That looks really good for daytime CGI. If you don't know, like, you'll see it in a lot of TV shows, even a lot of movies do it. If they're using like a CGI creature, they will try and put it either in a dark environment or nighttime. If it's on the streets, in the open, it's in the public, it's at nighttime. or it's in the shadows, one of the two, not in daylight. And that looked really, really good. I was actually really surprised by how good it looked. And like Doomsday, I think has looked pretty good throughout the entire season, but I think that's a standout shot. Like that, especially that opening thing where he's just standing in front of Lois and the boys there when he first lands, looked amazing. But yeah, Lois has no effect on him. He's like, who are you? And he almost tries to kill them, or kill Lois directly. But we do get Superman versing Doomsday again, which is really cool. And we have Jonathan and Jordan teaming up, saving the citizens while this is going on. However, Superman is struggling. He's obviously weaker than he last was when he versed Doomsday, and I guess logically, Doomsday gets stronger every single time he dies, well, he's versing a stronger Doomsday now. So he gets knocked to the ground, he's struggling, but he looks up and he smiles, and he says he loves his family, but this is as Doomsday grabs him and flies away with him, cutting to black, cliffhanger, and it makes you wonder what's going to happen next. Now, I don't think Superman's going to die again. However, I think we are going to have to see Jordan and Jonathan get involved. I think they realize, yeah, okay, John Henry's not coming with his suit because Lex hasn't. Natalie's suit was destroyed. Unless the goddamn Justice League from another Earth comes out through a portal, we're going to have to help our dad here. So I think that's really what we're going to get probably at the beginning of next episode. It was a really, hopefully like the Super Sons and Superman team up against Doomsday. And I think they probably kill him. And I think it might trigger Lex quite a lot. But I do wonder if there's like a downside to it, because I think if it then ends up like Lex having to come in and fight, you're probably going to have it be Superman versus Lex directly. So maybe, I don't know, something happens with Jonathan and Jordan, unless it's just something where they have to help clear the like citizens of Smallville again or something like that. I think Jonathan and Jordan would have to get a bit preoccupied if Doomsday is defeated and then Superman can take on Lex Luthor individually. I think that would have to happen, but once again, we'll wait and see. We're only got less than a week now, I guess, to see what happens in the episode. But overall, if we're going to look at these episode 9 and 10 as a two-parter, I think they nailed part 1. I really no complaints. Obviously, there's like some convenience issues if you really want to say it. Like the one thing I was thinking of, actually I can't remember off the top of my head. There was like one little nitpick I had or something like that. But I forgot to mention it actually in that thing where like Jonathan and Jordan were saving the citizens. I did like how he had the lady or the woman that ran the diner, Vic was her name? Anyway, whatever her name is. And Jordan like calmed her through like a panic attack because he was used to it. So I thought that was a nice moment that is not just him using his powers, it's him using his personal experience, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, it's going to be like, it's a bit of like a, like it's a sad thing that the show's ending next week, but it's also exciting at the same time because I'm really, really interested to see how they wrap up the show and lead from episode 9 into episode 10, or this, I guess, part 1, if you want to put it, into part 2, and how they wrap up just not just this conflict that we've been seeing, I guess, over technically the end of season 3 and heading into season 4, but just like the show as a whole and these characters, and I guess even Smallville as a town as well. So I'm just intrigued to see how they do it all. It's always interesting going into a series finale, especially one where they've actually had proper time to plan it, which the show has. I know season 4 wasn't really meant to be the final season, but they had a lot of time to plan for this series finale. So that gets me really interested to see what they do. Yeah, but that's a wait and see. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it, show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions and everything we went over in this video. What are your thoughts on this episode? What do you love? What do you hate? Any theories heading into next week's episode? Any expectations? What do you want to see in the finale? Let me know in the comments. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.